Hey everybody, this is going to be a different episode and I hope you enjoy it. So instead of me going through and trying to figure out things to write a review on and showcase and spend months doing a video, today we're going to take a look at a Using SDR DSP2 latest version 2.4 radio together. This is a software-defined receiver, and I don't know a lot about it, which will be fun as we go and we do an overview on it. And you'll get an idea if this is something that interests you or not. Please note I did ask my Discord for suggestions about what they would want to see, and I will respond to those as those things come up. So opening up the box, we do have a nice carrying case which measures about 8 inches wide by about 4.5 inches tall, if you will, and the thickness is roughly about 2 inches. The zippers appear to be of decent quality, although it's opening right here because I didn't have it fully zipped. Yep, zippers appear to be of decent quality. And of course we have a little carrying loop on here, which appears to be of decent quality as well, as long as you don't pull on it too hard. Inside the box, we also get what appears to be a stylus pen and a couple of 3M rubber feet. If you'll notice, I haven't really spoken much about the specifications of this radio because I'd like to do so as we unbox everything and go through it together. My opinion is this will give us a better idea without preconceptions of who this is made for. So let's go ahead and open up the case here. And before we look at the radio, oh, very cool. So there's a little hidden storage compartment. And the first thing I notice is there's accessories that come with this. These would be for the antenna connectors to, let me take that back. These are going to be for your volume knobs to adjust the volume accordingly, or your VFOs as well. We'll find out here in just a second as we put them to the side. See what else is internal here. There is a little ring that was just kind of floating around. A user manual. The user manual is of really good quality and it's in color. We'll take a look at this in a moment. These, if I had to take a guess, would be some kind of feet or a stand for the SDR. And a much better strap. I called it a loop earlier, but a much better strap. This one will be for the SDR itself. And it appears to be of a rubber-like substance. We also have a USB-C cable. And it looks like the only thing left is to take a look at our radio. Radio is held in by an elastic ribbon. And if I had to tell you, this thing is a little bit heavy. I'm going to go see if I can get a weight. I'll be right back. The way I measured it, we're at 1.2 pounds. And now for the big reveal. Whoa, this thing is huge. This is a lot larger than I thought. And before we do get started, let's go ahead and use our USB-C cable, plug it in, and let's get this charged up. A couple of things. I left this on the charger for 3 hours and 10 minutes. I plugged in the USB to a 5-volt 1 amp power brick, and 3 hours and 10 minutes later, the very red LED indicator was still showing, so it was still charging. Additional features on the side of this radio include a headphone jack, so that you're not hearing anything out of the speaker, as well as a standby button and an on-off switch. I suspect that the button and the switch are in place because you don't want to have this in your pocket and accidentally tap the power button. It's nice to have the switch to keep it off, and you could accidentally tap that as much as you want. Also note it would be a very large pocket. As we continue on, I do want to just point out on the top, I did swap out the knobs with the ones that we had extra in the box. And what I found is the difference between the knobs that are provided on the radio and the ones they give you in the box are a more textured surface with the additional ones in the box, whereas the ones that were installed were a smooth surface and a slightly higher profile on the buttons that come as extras. Now, swapping these buttons or knobs is a better way to put it out, all you have to do is just pull and put on the new or the old ones. Very simple, and you could see there the difference in the profile height. Additionally, there are 2 SMA ports, and as I read this user manual, which is actually pretty well written, as well as labeled on the SDR, we see 2 things: 50 ohm SMA, which is on the right or in the middle, and then we see a high Z SMA port. These SMA ports are female, meaning you would need a male SMA to plug in. But for example, with this user manual, if you did have questions about what the high Z is versus the 50 ohm impedance, you might just take a look at the contents here and find out where that's going to be listed. And after doing a little bit of reading within the manual, I did find this section which allows you to enable a software feature of the software-defined radio for your shortwave antenna or your SW antenna. And here it goes on to say that if you're going to, essentially what it's going to say or tell you is that if you have a resonant antenna that's 50 ohms roughly impedance, you're going to want to use your 50 ohm spot. But if you have a random wire antenna that might be a high impedance, like 450 ohms to 50 ohms, or a 9-to-1, for example, maybe you use the high Z section on here. Just food for thought, but that's what it appears based on what I'm reading. The Malahit, another thing that I learned, has a 5 amp hour or 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Why don't we go ahead now, turn it on, and get some answers about the frequencies, as well as how the speaker sounds, and I'm sure other things. I do also want to see how this works, which I suspect we use double-sided tape, stick this on right here, and we're happy. Now, when I'm making these videos, my thought process usually is what's the angle and who is this for? But today I'm kind of doing those things along the way. And the first thing I thought to myself was, if this does AM and it does it low enough, or rather FM and it does it, I could probably use this at the local drive-in theater instead of wasting my battery in my vehicle and having to go turn the vehicle back on every 43 minutes or whatever it is. So that's kind of a neat little feature. I think I'm going to put this right here without reading the instructions because that sounds logical. Hi everybody, Dude from the future, and I did actually make a couple observations while watching and editing my video that I want to point out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these feet here. As you're about to see, and as I've kind of written already, there's going to be a little bit of issue with instability because I was trying to set the SDR down, but that rear bracket or stand was on there, and it was creating like an instability of the SDR. With our 4 feet on there, it's much better. The next thing I want to point out here, and I think it's very important for some people, is this little ring that we found. It's for the strap. And so the theory is the ring goes onto the strap, and then the ring goes onto the SDR like this. And I would probably also point out that while not in use, it's always good to cover our SMA connectors. Now here's the deal. We're going to see this episode, and I will make mistakes, and some of them I won't catch, or there'll be better operating practices. I want to point out that there is a user manual. I don't like reading user manuals. I like to experiment with things and maybe take a look at a couple of small features and get an idea, but really just start to play with the different options myself. This gives me a better understanding of how things work. And your way of learning is maybe going to be different than mine, or maybe this works for you. Are you the kind of person who likes to go hands-on, or do you like to read the manual first? I'm not saying there's anything wrong either way. I'm just letting you know what I do, so you might see me pop back up during the rest of my video edit. But I thought those things were important for you to be able to see. Yeah, that's probably my fault right there. That's cool right there. You know, there is an angle here. It's just about 90 degrees, maybe even a little bit more over 90 degrees. which allows it to not just kind of like fall back in on itself. I like this. I think that that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and turn it on here. Again, I think I'm going to hit the power on switch. Nice bright green LED on the power button. We're now on day 3 of being able to record this, and I did have to take a step back from us just doing everything step by step for the flow and clarity of this video. And I think you would appreciate that. However, I did also make the observation that that digital artifacting I was just talking about seems to still be happening, and I think it has to do with a CPU overload. So before we get started, I want to explain why I think that, and you can let me know in the comments below what you think. However, everything that you've used pretty much on a software-defined radio is defined by software, which means when we change the volume and we change the frequencies and we're hitting buttons, we're utilizing CPU. And I think that I'm basically at a point where I have such or so many things going on, maybe listening to too wide of a frequency range, that we hear that digital artifacting occasionally when I'm doing those things. And that's because of theoretically, or what I theorize, is that CPU overload. So again, let me know in the comments below, and let's go ahead and get started. Let's do a couple of things off the bat here. Number one, I did find a telescopic antenna in the bag, so that's great. It includes a telescopic antenna, and we will compare this antenna and utilize it here in just a little bit. But right now, we're plugged in with a 4-to-1, so we're on the high Z side of things. Now, when you first get started with your SDR radio, you might be even asking yourself, well, how do I know if I have it configured to the right port? So the first thing we want to do is we want to configure the right port. We're now on the high Z side. So if we click on radio, and then we're going to see there's an option here. We can tap on it called SW or shortwave antenna, and we just change it to high Z, and automatically we saw our noise floor on this S meter jump up to S5. So I could also enable or disable the preamp. Let's go ahead and leave it disabled. But I could switch back to the 50 ohm antenna, which nothing is plugged into. We go down to like an S3. Let's switch over to the 4-to-1 on the high Z side and disable that preamp again. I have fat fingers, so I seem to not be hitting the right buttons, and my touchscreen pen is a little bit shaky at the moment. Anyway, we now know that we're on the correct antenna, so that's a good thing. We can tap radio to get back out to the main menu, and now we're starting to see at least something going on the waterfall display as well. For today's video, we're going to go ahead and check 40 meters to listen to some sideband, and I'm going to show you some noise reduction features. So first of all, this is noise reduction here, and it was enabled. We saw it up here in green. Tapping it again, we disable it. And we're going to go over to 40 meters and see if we could listen to a station with or without the noise reduction, so you could see how phenomenal it does sound. So again, though, we are currently selected on volume. There's a white line under volume. And if I were to use the volume knob now, I can go up and I can raise the volume, or I can lower it. If I tap the volume knob, it brings us over to FLT wide, or of course, attenuation. I like to keep it on volume so that if I ever do knock that knob, it only changes the volume and not the attenuation or the width. The next thing that I want to do is, now you saw that I typed in a frequency by typing in 7.225. But there is also another way that we could go ahead and change bands, and I want to show that to you as well. So that was 7.225. We could also use, we could also use the VFO knob, and we could adjust our VFO. You could see I'm going up in 10 increments, 600, 590, rather down in 10 increments or up. If I tap on this VFO button on the right, or the knob on the right, it allows me to change that. So right now I have a 10 hertz frequency adjustment every time I move. But if I continue to adjust this up or down, it will allow me to be able to do higher or lower. So for example, 25 hertz or 50 hertz. And I'm going to change this to 500 hertz for sideband. It's just what I prefer. And now as we switch through the VFOs, we receive 258, 258.5, 259, and so forth. So let's see if we can't find a station on 40 meters. Looks like there might be one right here. And we are in lower sideband mode. If we needed to change our sideband mode, all we do is hit mode, and then we could hit the correct one, whether it was upper sideband or FT8. We will get to the FT8 Decode as well as the CW Decode here in just a moment. but we don't. It's already on sideband, so that's a good thing. Let's go ahead and hit mode, and we're back down here. And to take one more step back, one of the things we could have done to change our frequency instead of tapping the frequency or using our VFO knob is we could hit band. When you hit band, it will allow you to choose what band you want to be on, for example, 40 meters. And we could just adjust from there. You'll notice that it did change my 500 hertz to 100 hertz when I did it through band mode. And I'm sure that those are all preset, or you should be able to set them so that you have different increments for each of the band shortcuts that you'd like to use. Regardless, let's go ahead and get out of here with band. I do want to point out that the touchscreen is good. It's me trying to use my finger, keep everything on the display, and sometimes utilizing, again, this stylus pen. But regardless, I think we're good right now. Let's go ahead and find a frequency.
We'll move on. And I'll kick it on over to Harry. So, good luck on CW. CW, and gosh, double fun. Well, I need to get back into it. Usually I get on in the morning and do CW, and anyway, so I got to get back into that and catch up to you, Harry. So, keep your 3MX. This is W80.
Now, I just enabled and disabled the noise reduction a little bit. And I say a little bit because it wasn't as aggressive as I typically think I like it. But let's listen to maybe a station that's coming in even a little bit better with and without the noise reduction. So let's go ahead and turn the noise reduction off.
Yes, I do. They're forecasting a low of 44 tonight. I didn't look to see what you're showing for us. Let me look. It's not really growing too much, but there were a lot of dead leaves on the ground already. You know, just being dry. Birthday coming up, 13. And, but anyway, I think they're all coming later for that. Anyway, we're going over there for dinner today. And then in the evening, we're going over to...
As you can see, turning on or off the noise reduction takes a certain noise floor and it tries to eliminate any of the noise that is at that noise level, and it tries to eliminate it. And the thing about the noise reduction on a Malahit or DSP like this is you should be able to adjust the aggressiveness of the noise reduction as well, probably by going into audio, and you see this noise reduction threshold. So for example, let's go back over here real quick.
What a beautiful morning out there, though. Well, I tell you what, it's real windy and something like that. I gave my yeah, when I got ready to come down here this morning, I thought, man, I better look on my phone, see the temperature. It's 49.
So you get the idea that I'm trying to be more aggressive on eliminating the noise or not. Anyway, that is kind of how it sounds. I got to tell you, it does sound phenomenal. This front speaker is really awesome. But what would happen if we wanted to like listen to the NOAA weather radio? And I'm curious because what do we need to do? Can we stay on the actual high Z antenna? Let's find out. And NOAA weather radio around here is something like, by the way, I have to hit audio to get to where I'm trying to go, which is the VFO entry. You can't just, for example, hit radio. Nothing's going to respond if you're in a menu. So for example, here, I'm just going to back out by hitting the VFO again. If I'm on audio, I can not hit the frequency to try to adjust it. I have to hit audio to exit out and then hit the frequency. So it's something to consider and keep in mind. By the way, there is, as you just saw, another way to change frequencies, and that's by tapping on the actual waterfall display itself. But let's go ahead and type in 162.500 NOAA weather radio. You'll notice we're in sideband again. I mentioned we're going to go ahead and hit mode. After we hit mode, we're going to go ahead and we're going to change it to wide FM. That's very interesting. See, I'm unable to actually change it. I take that back. I was able to change it. But we need to figure out why we're not hearing anything. Why don't we try something? Obviously, we're still in the high Z loop antenna. Why don't we swap out to the awesome telescopic antenna that comes with this and see if that corrects any functionality issues? Part of me says that I'm either getting interference or that there's maybe some input overload or some signal overload that's occurring, but let's find out. Now, I did swap out the antenna. I have it about 18 inches high for 162.500. There was a good period of time where I was on video, kind of wasting time, but basically trying to figure out why high Z was enabled, but it wasn't working when it was plugged into high Z. And again, these are the manual things. Some people like to read them, and some people like to learn by doing. And so that is it. It says here that the high Z mode is automatically turned off at high frequencies, as it does not make sense to use it in this situation. So you'll now see me go over to the 50 ohm antenna with the telescopic. If you're on this VHF band, it probably just defaults to the 50 ohm antenna. Again, I could be completely wrong, but that's the thing that I'm seeing here, or the process that I'm seeing here. By the way, when we talk about frequencies of this, we've noticed that we can go really low on frequencies, like 10 kilohertz. We can go up to 380 megahertz. In between 380 megahertz and around 410 megahertz, there is an area that you can't receive on. And I suspect that's because the developers are in a country where you can't utilize those frequencies, so they didn't code them. I don't really know. But then after that 410 megahertz, here, let's take a look at the manual. After that 404 megahertz, we can go up to 2 gigahertz on receiving. So that's kind of nice to know. And we have our WIS of 192, 96, and 48. But let's get a sound for NOAA weather radio. Let's turn that noise reduction off.
Per hour.
Really, there's no reason for us to have that noise reduction enabled, I think. Maybe a little.
Wednesday, highs in the lower 80s inland, but only in the upper 70s near the lake. Wednesday night, partly cloudy in the evening, then becoming mostly clear. Lows around 60. Thursday, mostly sunny. Highs around 80 inland, but only in the mid-70s near the lake. Thursday. Friday night, lows in the lower 60s. Saturday, partly cloudy. Highs in the mid-80s.
I would tell you that I think that the speaker sounds great on this, and I think that the receive quality is awesome. This NOAA weather radio station is probably 3 or 4 miles away, so it's not necessarily a huge distance or whatever. I could try to find a NOAA weather radio station. In fact, let's go ahead and use the waterfall display to try to find a NOAA weather radio station that's closer by, or excuse me, a little further away, and see, what can we hear then?
Waves 150 feet. Thursday, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots. Waves 1 to 3 feet. Here is a nearshore marine forecast for waters within 5 nautical miles of shore on Lake Michigan. For the following 3 feet.
Well, that sounds better.
Thursday, since the Pentwater
Actually, no, I think I like it better the other way. And I know that the instruction manual will tell us, but it's kind of fun for us to get to play around a little bit. And so again, if I go to like mode, I went to wide FM bandwidth standard. What does it sound like with narrow? This is kind of neat.
waves 4 to 6 feet,
Ugh.
occasionally to 8 feet. Tuesday night, south winds 10 to 20 knots, diminishing to 10 to 15 knots. Waves 4 to 6 feet, occasionally to 8 feet, subsiding to 2 to 4 feet. Wednesday, south winds 5 to 10 knots, becoming southeast. Waves 1 to 2 feet. Thursday, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots.
Oh yeah, that's way better.
Waves 1 to 3 feet.
So, here I am, I'm just playing around on NOAA weather radio, and it's like, well, yeah, there's a certain setting for that, but when I go through these and I get to play around like that and I get to hear the different audio sounds, then it makes me think, how does this sound on FM? And of course, I'm going to have to be a little bit careful on FM because, of course, copyright claiming. But I'm going to go to a local radio station. And on this local radio station, I really don't hear anything. But we have to set this to wide FM. Check it out. Oh, wait. You got to wait until there's a commercial. Stand by. They're playing a lot of good music on that station today, but I can't really give you music, so I'm scrolling around. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is it appears like the steps that you could use to adjust the frequency go up to 1 megahertz. So now we're going up 1 megahertz at a time, 98, 100 FM, 104 FM, 106 FM. We don't want that for this case, but it is nice to know that it goes up to 1 megahertz.
The Burbs. On Star 105.5.
Okay, well, you got a little bit of an idea there before the music came right back on. But when you have a station that actually is a strong signal coming in, this sounds pretty good. Let's go ahead, and that's a pretty interesting concept. Let's take this around the house here real quick and utilize this on AM to find sources of interference, because I think that that's another good use case. And then why don't we wrap this up by showing the CW decode as well as the FT8 decode and see if we can't get those to work. No, I'm not saying that this is a good Yagi by any means, but I do want to point out that if you had a Yagi antenna with an SMA connector, think about it, you could easily utilize it to hook up to the SMA and walk around and utilize this for direction finding, because if you point one way and it's super strong, and you point the opposite way, maybe it's not as strong, or you point in the opposite direction, it's not as strong, you know that you're probably in a certain direction for the signal or the source of interference. Here's my plan. I am currently on a frequency that doesn't receive any AM signals. As you can see, I'm in the high Z section with the antenna, and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to walk around the house and try to see if we can't get any kind of buzzing noises that emit from the lights, for example, or some of the electronics. Hey, now that was a little bit of clickbait because, it seems like, I found the source of my noise interference, and I just wanted to mention it's not the 3D printers in my case. It's actually the power strip that the 3D printers plug into, and I've known about that issue for a while, but it is fun to track down the source of interference, and I was able to do it with this. I do want to note that the source of interference was way louder and stronger in person. I think that the phone recorded it and did some kind of audio processing. But I also did want to point out that if we got close to that source of interference, what we could also do is start to turn our attenuation up and max out our attenuation so that basically if the signal is getting louder and louder and louder and our attenuation's all the way up, we're really close to the source of interference. So that seems to work cool and could be a very good use for this. I'd like to jump over to ham radio CW and then FT8. So let's go ahead and let's use the band feature this time, and let's go over to 40 meters. Puts us at 7.150. Let's go ahead and change our mode to CW, upper sideband, right? And we're going to enable CW decode as well. There's an option here for minimum SNR, or signal noise ratio. Now, that means that we're going to have to figure out what a good setting is for our minimum signal noise ratio where we're able to decode. If we have it too low or too high, it won't properly decode the CW signal. Let's just leave it at 20 for right now. And let's go back into 40 meters and get into the CW portion of the band. And we're going to go ahead and turn our attenuation down. Like, see, I wasn't seeing any signals at first. And a good possibility is that maybe the attenuation was part of the problem. Pretty interesting concept here. I have the volume down at the moment, but if I use this knob now, not only can I go into flat normal, flat wide, or FLT normal, FLT wide, but also I can click on CW minimum signal noise ratio instead of clicking radio, or was that audio? And going through this way, all I have to do at this point is just tap that button again until CW minimum signal noise ratio is highlighted, and then we could adjust it here. I'm actually not finding too many stations on 40 meters this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and jump over to 20. You can see I just tapped a part of the waterfall to get to that portion of the band. Seems to make things easier sometimes. And let's leave that at 20 for the signal noise ratio or thereabout. K2MYQ, thank you. CQ Route 66, Whiskey 6, Mike. And see, I adjusted the signal noise ratio to 30. Nice. There we go. I just moved up 100 hertz. And I think that that's more zeroed in for the frequency. But I do want to also point out that, you know, you're going to have to work with that signal noise ratio and the adjustments to find the good spot. This seems to be working okay. As we can see, Whiskey 6 Mike is making contact with Route 66 with Kilo 0, India, India. Gave him a 599 report. Good luck in the contest, 73. And with that, let's go ahead and check out FT8. Since we're here on 40 meters, or 20 meters, let's just stay on 20 meters. 20 meters is going to be, what is it, 7.4? And let's go ahead now. We got to change that mode over to FT8, right? So like upper sideband FT8. And with that, now we should be able to listen for some FT8 signals. Let's see. We definitely hear FT8, and in theory, what should happen now is we should see the call signs calling FT8, their countries, and their signal noise ratio listed right here. It would actually be fun for us to walk around the block with the telescopic antenna and see if we could pick up FT8 stations, even with this severely compromised antenna. Let's do that in just a second here. But first, let's make sure we could actually get signals. Pretty sure you may have just heard that as well, the digital artifacting that I mentioned. I'm assuming that there's a lot of signal processing that's occurring with FT8, and that's why we hear that digital artifacting. And as we could see here, we have a station calling CQ POTA. You see, for a moment, I jumped over to 075 just to experiment and play around and see what I was receiving or not. But not only do we have CQ POTA from K4CAE, but we have K0UO calling K3RH, obviously all in US. Here is their grid square, and this is their signal noise ratio. So that actually seems to work okay for my little experience with it, but I think that that's a really cool feature too. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to plug this in and do a quick lap around the block with the dog so he can get a little exercise, and I could see who's calling CQ or who I could hear on FT8 with this little guy right here. With the cool telescopic antenna on the high Z, I went ahead and I went, just like you see here, to 14.074 while outdoors, and I was picking up FT8 from all over the world, really. I was kind of surprised. And the signal noise ratio is anywhere from -1 to -18 dB. And so it wasn't, again, it's a compromise, but it is cool to be able to say, like, look at right there, WV3L from K4CAE, NE5RO, K3RH, 0, -1, -1. And I'm just sitting here with the telescopic antenna. That's cool. So the same thing with CW Decode too, is like, maybe you want to listen to CW Decode or see what's on the airwaves while you're out driving around town, or maybe you're on a long drive somewhere where you don't have like an actual ham radio or room for a huge HF radio. This might work for some receive. I like it. As the signals continue to come in, we get an idea -4, -11, -16. We can get an idea where they're coming from. And it's really nice to know we could do that with just a telescopic antenna. I think it's really cool that there's such a portable feature of this. And we could do the same thing again with the CW decode I just showed you, or the RIDI that I never did show you, but there is a mode here for RIDI. I want to also point out that I've probably had this on for a total of somewhere around 7 hours while recording this video. And you saw me charge it up at the beginning. It was at 4.1 volts roughly when I started. It's at 3.7 volts now. So in my experience, for what you see me been doing and the testing that I've been conducting, I'm okay with it. It's a 5 amp hour battery, and I think that it's doing a decent enough job. I also do want to point out that we went over a lot of cool features and the uses for this device today, but that doesn't mean that everything I talk about is everything that this will do. It can do more. For example, think about HDSDR, which is a software, and there's instructions in the user manual on how to hook up HDSDR. If the instructions weren't in the user manual, there might be a guide online, and if that's not the case, I can go ahead and make the guide. But I mean, your key to really understanding an SDR, as well as me, because again, we just kind of got to go through this together, is starting to understand the dual sideband amplitude modulation, DSP, upper sideband, lower sideband. This book has all the definitions and a lot of cool stuff here. It shows you how you could edit memory slots, so that's nice too, in case when you go to a memory slot, maybe you want to go to a different frequency other than 3.6.50. But my point being is there's so many different features we could change. You just saw here how my FT8 shows way more call signs than it did a few moments ago, and that's because I went to visual and I adjusted the pan percentage. But today we kind of went over and we showed off how you could utilize the different antennas with the SW antenna adjust, why you would use high Z versus 50 ohms. We got to play around with like wideband versus narrowband and just kind of listen to the difference while listening to NOAA weather radio. We utilized this for the functionality of FM radio, which I think would be great at a drive-in. We used AM to go ahead and kind of see if there was any kind of interference. Think about it. We looked at the CW, and we got to see the CW decode and how it works, particularly with adjustments of the signal noise ratio. We got to watch FT8 signals come in and be decoded. And yes, there is some digital artifacting on here, which I think, again, is important to mention. But even with all that, too, we also got to listen to the noise reduction feature on sideband. So this has a lot of capabilities and a lot of uses. It does seem like, I think the price is somewhere around $475 for it right now, $475 US. And it seems like a lot of money, but also there's a lot of functionality that could be involved with this. You could listen to your local EMS as well as GMRS, ham. If it's on the airwaves, you should be able to listen to it. As of right now, it doesn't appear that there's any kind of decoding for Meshtastic, which would be really cool. And I bet you that there'd be a few people who would love to see that feature of Meshtastic and being able to watch the stations come in. And, when you talk about SDRs, you can get an RTL SDR that can do a lot of the same stuff. For example, RTL SDR, which is a cheaper SDR. It's an entry-level SDR. Hey, I'm going to jump in right here and mention if you're interested in an RTL SDR, or if you want to know more about software-defined radios, I'm going to link you to my buddy Tom, who has a phenomenal video on it. And Tom, congratulations on 100K. Back to the video. You could decode DMR if you have the right software on your computer to do so. So there are some things to take in mind and consider here, but we got to take a look at the Malahit DSP 2 from Guzizu today. And I want to thank them for sending it to me. And, hopefully this gave you a better feel of why you might want an SDR. If you are interested in the DSP 2 version 2.4, I will leave you an affiliate link down below. If you liked this video, or if you found any kind of benefit into it, or if you appreciate the community aspect that I'm trying to go for in this video, please like, comment, subscribe. It really does help out in the YouTube algorithm. I hate to ask for that kind of thing, but it does help me out a lot as well. If you like this video, you might like this video. Thanks for watching the channel, and goodbye.